Alright guys, and today we are revisiting my absolute favourite isopod, the rubber ducky. I've been looking forward to this video for quite a while now. I am finally doing an update and care guide for our rubber ducky isopods. So let's get a look at how I went from this to this. I've been slowly getting more and more into isopods over the last year, and now that I've had success keeping and breeding one of the trickier species, I wanted to share that experience with all you amazing people. So if you've not watched my first video on rubber duckies, make sure you go and check that out after this one. That's where we set up this little sad looking enclosure that is now about to get a massive upgrade for the wee guys in here. So let's start by rounding up all my rubber duckies that are still currently in this enclosure. So now that we've got our animals at least mostly accounted for, let's get a look at what we're going to need for the rest of the build. To start with, I have this glass aquarium that is a 30 by 30 centimetre cube. Plenty of space for these guys. We'll also be using a customised substrate mix, moss and plants, rocks, leaf litter, and various other bits of decor as well. These isopods are found around the mouths of caves and Asian tropical forests, so we want our enclosure to feel like a snapshot of that environment. And this is where our substrate is quite important. These cave systems tend to have a lot of calcium or limestone runoff into the substrate surrounding them. So now obviously we want to mimic that in our enclosure. We're starting with a basic topsoil, and to that I'm going to add some tortoise substrate, chopped mixed sphagnum, leaf litter, and then the pivotal ingredient, garden lime. This will add that much needed calcium and magnesium to the substrate mix. On top of that substrate, I'm going to add some small chunks of rotten deciduous hardwood, and then a bigger piece near the back of the enclosure. This is actually another source of food for our isopods, as well as providing some much needed shelter. I've also got this piece of dragonstone I want to use, so I'm going to place it right here and then start to plant some of my forest moss around that area. With that moss in place, I can then start to put in some of my plant cuttings, such as this Ficus pumila, stringy turtles, and maybe even some small Photonia. And with all that greenery in place, we're now going to try and balance it out with some natural decor. Starting with a good amount of Habitat leaf litter, and then working in some other botanicals around it. I'm also going to add a small chunk of cuttlefish bone as an easy source of calcium for them. Calcium is super important for crustaceans because it allows them to rebuild their shells during molts. So you need to make sure you have an ample supply of calcium in there, which we've now got in the substrate and just an additional source on the side. And now we're going to add our first inverts to the setup, but that isn't isopods, it is of course our springtails. These guys will feed on any excess food or waste, as well as keeping any mould growth under control, which is really important in these setups. And finally we can move our duckies into their new home. I had some pretty good breeding success in the first enclosure, and I've got an even better feeling about this one. So make sure you're subscribed to see how this all turns out. Now if you have been following along and set up an enclosure a bit like mine, the rest of the care for these guys is actually pretty simple. Keep them at a temperature range between roughly 22-28 degrees Celsius, and then feed them roughly once or twice a week with some fresh organic veg, and even fish flakes are quite good for them. It's also important you maintain a good humidity in your enclosure, so you might need to add some water as that substrate looks like it might be drying out. If it gets too dry, your isopods will struggle to breathe because they've actually got some specialised gills being crustaceans. If you would be interested in a video in the future diving into the strange anatomy and evolution of isopods, let me know down in the comments, and that's maybe something we can make happen. It's worth noting that every year or two you'll want to take out all the substrate in your enclosure and refresh it with some new stuff. That's because build-up of things like heavy metals and ammonia can actually be fatal for your isopods. So if you ever do see your cultures crashing, try refreshing the soil and see how that works. But apart from that, their care couldn't be any easier. Give them a wee bit of peace in a quiet area away from excess sunlight and you will have a thriving colony in no time. So, do you want to see any more species of isopod on the channel? If you do, drop a comment down below, tell me which ones, and I'll see what I can work out. Also, let me know what you think of this setup. I'm already planning a future video which is going to be looking at a more cost-effective setup for breeding or beginners. But I just want to say thank you guys for all the support so far, and until next time, cheerio and rasta.